Imagine a flash so impossibly bright it just cuts through every single ordinary moment of your day. The world as you know it, well, it's transformed in an instant. What happens next? Beyond the terrifying headlines and, the abstract, what are the incredibly practical, minute-by-minute, decision-by-decision actions that actually determine survival? Because when the unthinkable happens, it's not just about hiding. It's about doing.
It's a scenario humanity has long relegated to, well, the realm of fiction or maybe to specialized military and governmental planning documents, right?
Sure.
But the truth is, meticulously detailed real-world protocols for such an event do exist. The sheer scope of immediate and cascading effects is, frankly, daunting. It demands an almost instantaneous shift in mindset from everyday life to absolute focused survival.
Absolutely. And today, our deep dive takes us into just such a realm, surviving a nuclear event. But we're approaching it from a truly unique and, I think, compelling angle through the lens of a factory worker. This isn't just about general preparedness, the kind of advice you might see on a public service announcement. This is about leveraging a specific environment, a massive industrial complex, and a set of skills you might not immediately consider paramount for survival, but which could prove to be the ultimate advantage.
Indeed. It's about how an intimate, almost subconscious knowledge of a complex industrial facility transforms from a daily routine, punching the clock, running a machine, maybe stocking a shelf, into a profound, life-saving asset for enduring the unthinkable.
Yeah.
We're going to explore how familiarity with a place, that detailed mental map, can become a blueprint for resilience.
Our mission in this deep dive, then, is to unpack an extraordinary resource, one you might never have heard of, a factory worker nuclear war survival guide. We're going to extract the most critical nuggets of knowledge from this, explore the, well, surprising advantages an industrial setting provides, and discover how that deep, intuitive understanding of a facility could be the ultimate form of preparation. By the end of this deep dive, you'll gain a concrete understanding of not just what to do, but why specific actions matter, with enough detail to truly be well-informed about something so utterly devastating, yet so meticulously planned for.
And we'll be drawing extensively from a detailed industrial survival protocol document. This isn't just broad theory. It offers a really granular look at both the immediate and long-term realities of such an event. It paints a vivid picture of how a factory, often overlooked in general survival advice,
Yeah, totally overlooked.
could become a crucial nexus for not just immediate survival, but potentially even the seeds of rebuilding a functioning society. It's about seeing opportunity where others might only see ruin.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're going to start with the most immediate, terrifying moments. Imagine yourself on the factory floor, maybe grabbing a cup of coffee during a break, or running a shift on a machine, and then the flash. The unimaginable beginning of a nuclear detonation isn't a single isolated event, as, many might think. Our sources describe it as a multi-hazard event of unparalleled intensity. Think of it as a terrifying, chaotic cascade.
Right.
Survival hinges on your immediate, instinctual, and absolutely correct actions in the face of this chaos, actions that often go against every human instinct.
That's a critical point. The energy released by a nuclear explosion, it unfolds in a horrifyingly rapid sequence, almost too fast to comprehend. Approximately 50%, half of that total energy comes as a devastating shockwave.
Half. Wow.
Yeah, half. Picture a colossal, invisible wall of air traveling at hundreds of kilometers per hour, just ripping through everything in its path.
Yeah.
In a factory setting, this isn't just structural damage to buildings, though that's bad enough. It means heavy machinery, often weighing tons, could be dislodged and thrown around like toys. Imagine a forklift becoming a lethal projectile, or a rack of inventory transforming into deadly shrapnel.
Oh, man.
This blast wave can cause catastrophic structural damage, inflict severe lung injuries on anyone nearby just from the pressure change, and like you said, turn even mundane, unsecured objects, tools, parts, office equipment into lethal projectiles, moving at incredible speeds.
So it's not just the blast itself that's the immediate threat, is it? It's the sheer force turning your familiar workspace into a literal death trap.
Precisely. No, not at all. Another significant portion, about 35% of the total energy, is released as intense heat, known as thermal radiation.
Thermal radiation.
This travels at the speed of light. That means it reaches you almost instantaneously before the shockwave even arrives.
Before. Okay.
Yeah. This thermal pulse causes severe burns to any exposed skin. It can ignite highly flammable materials instantly and has the potential to start widespread fires over a vast area, creating what could quickly become a firestorm. especially in an industrial complex filled with flammable liquids, gases, materials.
Yeah, factories are full of that stuff.
Exactly. Then, a smaller but equally dangerous portion, roughly 5%, is initial, highly penetrating nuclear radiation gamma rays and neutrons delivered directly from the fireball itself. This is the invisible killer, causing immediate cellular damage.
And what about the other 10%? We hear so much about fallout, but that's not part of this immediate, terrifying first minute, is it?
You're right to separate them. That remaining 10% of the energy is delayed fallout radiation, which we'll definitely address in much more detail later. But for that critical first minute, the immediate overwhelming dangers are unequivocally the blast and the heat,
Okay.
followed by that initial penetrating radiation. They are the twin hammers that strike first, demanding an instant life or death response.
So, how does that translate to what you actually do in those first few seconds? Because it really depends on whether you have any warning at all, even a few minutes, right? Or if it's just there.
It does, and that distinction is crucial. While rare, a missile-delivered weapon could potentially provide an advance warning, perhaps 15 to 20 minutes from detection to impact.
Okay, 15 minutes. Doesn't sound like much.
It isn't, and it's absolutely critical to understand. This brief window is not for evacuation. You don't have time to gather your family, try to contact loved ones, or drive away. That precious time is for one thing only: immediate shelter.
Right, get inside.
Get inside the most robust building available. And once inside, move as far as possible from any windows, large doors, or exterior walls. These are the weakest points of any structure and will be your greatest danger from the blast wave and, flying glass. Think of it: a concrete utility tunnel or a central windowless server room. Even if they seem inconvenient, they become literal lifelines.
And if there's no warning, which, let's be realistic, is probably the more likely terrifying scenario for many in a targeted area, what's the first indication?
If there's no warning, the very first indication you'll receive, if you happen to be looking in the general direction, will be an instantaneous, unimaginable flash of light, brighter than the sun itself, 1,000 times brighter.
Oh my God.
And this is where the single most critical reflexive action comes into play, a truly counterintuitive one. Do not look at the flash or fireball.
Don't look.
Your natural human instinct might be to stare at something so intensely bright to try and comprehend it. But doing so will cause immediate severe flash blindness, which could be temporary, but is far more likely to be permanent, especially at closer distances. You simply won't see anything else after that.
So as soon as you perceive that flash, that blinding light, what's the next immediate movement? You've got like a fraction of a second to respond.
Immediately you must drop to the ground, face down,
Right.
flat.
Face down. Okay.
Your hands should be tucked under your body, preferably covering your neck or head as much as possible. This protects exposed skin from the subsequent thermal pulse, that intense heat we mentioned. And from any flying debris, the blast wave will churn up in the seconds that follow.
Right.
This prone position also presents the smallest possible profile to that incoming shock waves, distributing the force over your body and maximizing your initial chance of survival from the sheer mechanical force. Think of it as becoming as small and as dense as possible against an unimaginable impact.
It's incredible how these immediate reactions, though they feel so unnatural and like against every instinct in the moment, are scientifically proven to be the most effective ways to maximize your initial survival. Every fraction of a second, every movement becomes critically important.
And then once that initial primary blast wave has passed, which, depending on your distance from the detonation, could take 30 seconds or even more to reach you, a crucial narrow window opens up. This is the period of approximately 10 to 15 minutes before radioactive fallout begins to descend from the atmosphere. This is the air you breathe right after the shock wave, before the dust starts to fall.
This sounds like the absolute most important period then for your long-term prospects. This is your chance to make a decisive move.
It truly is. This brief interval is entirely dedicated to improving your long-term survival. Your singular objective is to move from your initial point of cover, where you drop to the ground, to the best possible fallout shelter within your immediate vicinity.
Right now.
Right now. This is not a time for indecision or panic. It is not a time to try and search for colleagues or attempt to contact family members. Every second must be dedicated to reaching a location that offers the maximum mass for shielding against the coming radiation. This requires a rapid assessment, or ideally, a preconceived plan, because the actions you take in these 10 to 15 minutes will largely determine your cumulative radiation dose over the subsequent days and weeks. It is, quite literally, a race against an invisible clock.
And as if the blast, heat, and radiation weren't enough, we also have to consider the electromagnetic pulse, or EMP. This is a powerful, instantaneous, high-voltage surge generated concurrently with the blast and thermal effects. It radiates outward, capable of damaging unshielded electronic equipment and disrupting power grids over a wide area. What does this mean for a factory?
For the factory worker, an EMP means an immediate and almost certainly permanent loss of electrical power.
Just gone.
Gone. This event plunges the entire facility into absolute darkness, assuming daytime lighting relied on electricity. All electronically controlled machinery, from assembly lines and robotic arms to security systems and automated conveyors, simply ceases to function.
Wow.
Imagine a finely tuned production line, suddenly silent, frozen. All conventional communication, landlines, cell phones, even internet radios go silent. Automated security doors might lock or unlock, depending on their fail-safe mechanisms. Ventilation systems halt, and electronic control panels become useless, mere inert plastic and metal.
So any emergency plan that relied on electronics is effectively null and void from that moment. You're immediately thrust back into a, like you said, pre-industrial technological state, relying on mechanical know-how.
Exactly. Survival now demands an immediate adaptation to relying on manual tools, mechanical processes, and whatever daylight or emergency chemical lighting you might have stashed away. Critically, wasting any of that precious 10 to 15 minute window attempting to use a phone or a computer is a potentially fatal error.
Don't even bother.
Don't bother. Your survival now depends entirely on physical action and mechanical ingenuity, not electronic aids. You are, in essence, becoming your own power source and problem solver.
And this brings up a unique, even ironic challenge for the factory worker. While government guidance often points to factories as robust, potentially safe structures due to their heavy construction,
Right, because they are often robust.
the industrial environment itself simultaneously transforms into a secondary hazard zone. It's not just the external threat anymore, is it?
No, it's a terrifying internal one as well, often more immediate and localized. The very robustness of a factory can hide inherent dangers that are magnified by a shockwave. The force from a nuclear detonation can rupture high-pressure gas lines, dislodge incredibly heavy machinery from its moorings, think multi-ton presses or industrial boilers, and compromise the structural integrity of storage tanks filled with flammable or toxic chemicals.
Oh, jeez.
This isn't theoretical. This can trigger a rapid cascade of secondary disasters. Massive fires, dangerous chemical spills, and subsequent explosions. These localized industrial hazards may, in some cases, pose a more immediate and localized threat than the nuclear effects themselves, especially if you're right next to them.
So your survival calculus now becomes incredibly complex. It's not just about finding shelter from radiation. It's about navigating a newly created internal battlefield.
Exactly. Your path to the best radiological shelter might, paradoxically, lead directly through a newly created chemical hazard zone. Imagine you know a maintenance pit, deep underground, that offers excellent shielding from gamma radiation. It's your ideal Tier 1 shelter.
Okay, perfect.
But what if that pit happens to be right next to a now ruptured pipe leaking anhydrous ammonia, a highly toxic gas? Or what if the most shielded area is under a massive piece of equipment that's just been dislodged and could collapse further? What do you do then?
This is precisely where the factory workers' intimate lived knowledge of the plant's layout becomes a profoundly critical survival tool. Knowing what chemical storage is, the precise routing of gas lines, where heavy equipment might shift, where emergency shutoffs are about, it all comes into play in those precious seconds.
Absolutely. The choice of shelter in those first 15 minutes isn't merely about finding the most concrete wall or deepest level. It's about finding the safest intersection of radiological protection and industrial stability.
Right, weighing the risks.
A slightly less shielded but chemically inert location, such as a basement beneath an administrative office block, which might seem less robust initially, may prove to be a far superior and safer choice to a heavily shielded but now chemically or structurally hazardous location on the main production floor. This is where their unique advantage, their internal map of the factory, truly begins to pay dividends.
So you've survived the initial shock, maybe you're hunkered down in a ditch or under a workbench, and you've got this tiny, critical 10 to 15 minute window before the fallout starts to descend. Now it's about securing maximum protection from that incoming radioactive dust.
Yes.
This is where the factory truly transforms from a workplace into a potential fortress if you know what you're doing.
It absolutely does. Once that primary blast wave has passed and you've taken initial cover, the focus shifts entirely to the immutable laws of radiation protection. Time, distance, and most importantly, shielding.
Time, distance, shielding. Okay.
Fallout, as we discussed briefly, isn't just an abstract concept. It consists of irradiated particles of dirt and debris carried high into the atmosphere by the blast and then falling back to Earth. These particles emit dangerous gamma radiation, which can penetrate most materials, making robust shielding absolutely essential. Think of it like an invisible, insidious dust storm, but one that is literally lethal.
So, how do you assess where to go within a massive factory? Not all locations offer equal protection, I imagine. It's not just about finding a room.
You're absolutely right. A worker, drawing on their intimate knowledge, must rapidly identify the optimal shelter based on a clear hierarchy of effectiveness, leveraging those principles of time, distance, and shielding. This isn't just about general advice. It's about applying specific knowledge to your unique environment. Our Tier 1, the optimal locations, are those that are deep underground.
Deep underground.
If your factory has sub-basements, utility tunnels, maintenance tunnels, or any purpose-built storm or blast shelters, these are your gold standard. They maximize both distance from surface fallout. You're literally under tons of earth and concrete and provide formidable shielding from the intervening earth and concrete, which are the most effective and readily available shielding materials against gamma radiation. Think of the boiler room's deep foundation or the sub-level utility runs.
So going as low and as deep as humanly possible is always the first choice. What if your factory doesn't have that kind of deep underground infrastructure? What's your next best bet?
Then you move to Tier 2, which are still excellent choices. The basements of large multi-story buildings constructed of concrete or brick.
Okay, basements.
Many administrative blocks or older factory sections have these. The sheer mass of the multiple floors above provides formidable shielding against fallout that accumulates on the roof and surrounding ground. And within that basement, the most protected area will always be a corner that is furthest below the outside ground level, maximizing that earth shielding where the concrete foundation meets the soil.
Got it. Furthest corner below ground level. And if you're above ground, perhaps in a multi-story production facility but still need protection, what if there's no basement access or it's simply too far?
That's Tier 3, which offers adequate protection if managed correctly. If no basement is accessible, the windowless core of the middle floors of a tall, robustly constructed building is viable.
Middle floors.
Yes. This leverages distance, moving occupants away from the highest concentrations of fallout on the ground and the roof. Critically, you must always avoid the top floor, as fallout settles heavily on the roof, effectively turning it into a primary radiation source directly above you.
Right, don't want that.
And the ground floor is also less ideal due to its proximity to ground level fallout, and it's most susceptible to lateral penetration. So you're looking for that central reinforced windowless space, a core area.
So avoid the top and bottom floors if you're not going underground. But what about a typical single-story factory? Many industrial complexes are sprawling, single-level structures, often built with lighter materials. Is survival even possible there?
Absolutely. Even in a single-story factory, survival is still possible, which is our Tier 4. Suboptimal, but viable. The best location is an interior windowless room with the most substantial walls and ceiling available.
Like tool crib.
Exactly, like a tool crib. A walk-in freezer with the door propped open to prevent accidental locking and suffocation, of course. Or a central office made of thick concrete blocks. Even the basement of a simple wood frame building, if that's all you have, can provide a protection factor, or PF, of 10.
Left 10.
Which is considered adequate for survival by federal planning guidance. The key, regardless of the structure, is finding mass as much dense material between you and the outside as possible.
This is truly where the factory worker's unique resource map really comes into play, isn't it? It's far beyond the general advice you'd give to the general public.
Oh, absolutely.
While others are searching for any concrete building, you, the factory worker, know exactly where to go.
This is where the factory worker possesses a unique and decisive advantage over almost any other survivor. They have an intrinsic, detailed, and almost muscle memory-based mental map of their entire environment. While official guidance tells the general public to find a concrete building, the factory worker doesn't just know there's a concrete building. They know the precise location of, say, the reinforced concrete pump house in the sub-basement, complete with its exact wall thickness, the location of the heaviest equipment that can be moved for additional shielding, and perhaps even that old forgotten storage room filled with bags of cement.
So it's not just find dense materials, but I know exactly where those pallets of bagged cement mix are in Section C of the warehouse, and I know the maintenance shop holds the only manual pallet jack needed to move them, which I can operate in the dark.
Exactly, that level of detail. This intimate pre-existing knowledge of the facility's layout, inventory, and logistics eliminates the guesswork that would consume that critical 10 to 15-minute window for an outsider. It allows a worker to formulate and execute a sophisticated shelter and fortification plan with unmatched efficiency and speed.
Right.
This mental map transforms what would be a chaotic post-detonation landscape of hazards into a structured, almost intuitive inventory of survival assets. You're not just looking at a stack of industrial parts, you're seeing a raw material for survival.
So for this advantage to be fully realized, it requires some pre-planning. You'd need to mentally identify your primary and secondary shelter locations and the nearest fortification materials during your daily routines. It's a very active, deliberate form of preparation, seeing your workplace in an entirely new light.
It is. It transforms daily familiarity into a survival superpower. Now let's talk about the physics of shielding in practice and how you can actually fortify. The effectiveness of a material is fundamentally determined by its density and thickness.
Density and thickness.
We talk about having thickness, which is the amount of material needed to reduce gamma radiation by 50%. For example, that's approximately 1 centimeter, or about 0.4 inches for lead.
Not much lead needed then.
No, lead's very dense, but you probably don't have sheets of lead lying around. More realistically, it's about 6 centimeters, maybe 2.4 inches for concrete, and around 9 centimeters or 3.5 inches for packed earth.
Okay, so concrete and earth are pretty good. You just need more of them than lead.
Exactly. And it's not just an additive effect where you add one layer and then another. It's a multiplicative effect, isn't it?
Multiplicative. How does that work?
Precisely. This is crucial for understanding its power. 10 halving thicknesses of a material will reduce radiation exposure by a factor of approximately 2 to the power of a 10, which is 1,024 times.
1,000 times less radiation.
Over 1,000 times. Yeah, that's a massive life-saving reduction. And this is where a factory becomes your ultimate advantage. It's essentially a massive warehouse of incredibly dense materials that can be repurposed. Think heavy machinery, stored raw materials like steel coils or giant paper rolls, large water tanks, even finished goods on pallets. All of these represent potential shielding mass that you, the worker, know how to access and move.
So what are some practical, expedient fortification methods that a factory worker, someone like you, could immediately employ to increase their protection factor within minutes?
There are many options, depending on what's available. First, raw materials and pallets. If a manual pallet jack is available, or even a functioning forklift, which is less likely given the EMP, but worth considering if it was off-grid or shielded.
Right, maybe an old diesel one.
Maybe. You can use it to quickly move pallets of dense goods. Think bagged powders like cement or sand, metal parts, heavy canned goods from the cafeteria storeroom, or even stacks of heavy paper. These can be used to block windows, reinforce interior walls, and add layers of mass around your chosen spot.
And those ubiquitous 55-gallon drums, common in almost any industrial setting.
Incredibly useful,
Yeah.
and often overlooked. These common industrial containers, when filled with water, sand, dirt, or any dense liquid or solid, become excellent modular shielding blocks. They can be rolled into place to create thick, temporary barriers, providing substantial protection.
Clever.
Then there's metal stock. While thin sheet metal offers little protection against gamma rays, heavy steel plates, I-beams, or solid metal billets from a fabrication shop or raw material storage area are superb shielding materials. Even lighter sheet metal can be bent or welded to construct forms or bins, which can then be filled with dirt, gravel, or scrap metal to create mass where none existed before.
Like building your own sandbags, basically.
Kind of, yeah. And if actual sandbags are available from industrial or construction sites, empty bags, sand, or gravel, they are ideal for quickly constructing highly effective protective walls. The factory is a giant Lego set for survival, if you know how to use the pieces.
So once you've picked your spot, identified your materials, and started piling on the shielding, what's the final, absolutely critical step before the fallout actually arrives and fills the air with that deadly dust?
The final step, and one that separates short-term survival from long-term viability, is to secure and isolate the interior environment of your chosen shelter. Remember, radioactive fallout is a physical contaminant, a fine sand-like dust that you can inhale or that can settle on surfaces. Preventing its entry into your shelter is absolutely critical.
Keep the dust out.
Keep the dust out. All ventilation systems that draw air from the outside, your heating, ventilation, air conditioning, HVAC units, forced air heating systems, large industrial fans, exhaust vents, must be shut down immediately. Any remaining gaps around doors, windows, or ventilation ducts should be sealed.
And this is another area where the factory's existing resources truly shine. You're not relying on a flimsy tarp and some masking tape from your home.
Absolutely. Shipping and maintenance departments are often excellent sources for the necessary materials. large rolls of heavy-duty plastic sheeting, and abundant industrial-grade duct tape. These can be used to create a remarkably airtight seal, effectively preventing the infiltration of those dangerous fallout particles. It's about creating a safe, sealed bubble within the larger, now hostile industrial shell, making that internal space your sanctuary. Every gap, no matter how small, becomes a potential entry point for danger.
So you're in the shelter, the door is sealed tight with plastic sheeting and duct tape, and the fallout has begun to descend outside. This period immediately following its arrival is the most dangerous. Radiation levels outside will be at their peak, and survival now depends entirely on remaining inside your well-shielded location.
Indeed. This phase, which could last from a few days to several weeks depending on the local fallout patterns and your proximity to ground zero, demands strict discipline, meticulous resource management, and the establishment of routines to maintain both physical and, crucially, psychological health.
It's not a sprint anymore, it's a marathon.
Exactly. It's no longer about immediate reaction. It's about endurance, patience, and a relentless focus on the basics of survival.
One of the most critical elements right at the start is what happens if someone was caught outside when the fallout began and now wants to enter the primary shelter. What's the protocol for allowing them in without compromising everyone else's safety? This must be an incredibly difficult, almost agonizing decision in a real-world scenario.
It is a critical imperative, and yes, often an agonizing one. Anyone who was outside when the fallout began must be contaminated before they are allowed into the primary living area of the shelter.
Must be. No exceptions.
No exceptions. Failure to do so will introduce highly radioactive particles into your safe zone, contaminating the space, your precious supplies, and your fellow survivors. This is non-negotiable for the safety of the group.
And how do you decontaminate effectively in such a scenario without a full hazmat team or medical facilities? What are the steps?
It's a multi-step process designed for simplicity and effectiveness in a low-resource environment. First, step 1. Remove outer clothing.
Outer layer off.
Yes. This is the simplest yet most effective step, capable of eliminating up to 90% of the radioactive material contaminating a person. It must be done carefully, in a designated entryway or transitional area separate from the main living space. The individual should handle their clothing minimally to avoid shaking radioactive dust into the air.
Okay.
The clothing then goes into a heavy-duty plastic bag, seal it tightly with duct tape, and store it as far from occupants as possible, preferably outside the immediate shelter if there's a secure, contained space, like a double-door airlock system if you can manage it.
What's next? A shower, if possible, for further decontamination.
If a water source and drainage are available in that decontamination area, perhaps a utility sink that still has pressure from a gravity-fed tank, or maybe a dedicated emergency shower for chemical spills.
Right, factories sometimes have those.
Exactly. Then yes, the individual should wash all exposed skin and hair with soap and water. Crucially, do not scrub or scratch the skin, as this can create microscopic abrasions that allow radioactive particles to enter the body more easily. Gentle washing.
Gentle washing, no scrubbing. Got it.
And here's the surprising detail from the protocol. Hair conditioner must not be used.
Conditioner? Why not?
Its chemical compounds can act as a binding agent, effectively gluing radioactive material to the hair shaft, making it harder to wash off. Soap and water.
Fascinating and terrifying that something so innocuous as hair conditioner could become a hazard. What if there's no running water for a shower in that decontamination zone, which is likely in an EMP scenario?
In many scenarios, a functioning shower won't be available. That's probably the more likely case. In that case, step 3 is waterless decontamination.
Okay, waterless. How?
This involves using clean wet cloths, paper towels, or industrial wipes that might be abundant in a factory setting. The individual systematically wipes down all exposed skin. Pay particular attention to gently blowing the nose and wiping eyelids, eyelashes, and ears to remove any inhaled or settled particles.
Wow, really thorough.
Yes. And as before, all used wipes and cloths must be treated as contaminated waste and sealed in a plastic bag with the discarded clothing. It's a painstaking but life-saving process, requiring extreme discipline from everyone involved.
Once everyone is in and decontaminated and the shelter is sealed, it's all about resource management and rationing. What's safe to consume? And how do you make it last for weeks, maybe even months?
First, a critical baseline. Any food and water already inside the building in sealed containers is generally safe for consumption.
Sealed containers are key.
Sealed is key. This includes bottled water from offices, packaged vending machine goods, chips, candy bars, stuff like that, or cafeteria supplies like canned foods or non-perishables in sealed bags. However, the exterior of all food and drink containers should be wiped clean with a damp cloth before opening to remove any settled fallout dust. You don't want to transfer those particles to your mouth.
Right, don't contaminate the inside. And water, of course, is the most critical resource, even more so than food.
Absolutely the most critical. The recommended minimum for survival is 1 gallon, or approximately 4 liters per person per day. This covers both drinking and basic sanitation needs.
1 gallon per person per day.
Minimum. This supply must be strictly controlled and rationed from the outset, because you need it to last for a minimum of 2 weeks of confinement, and potentially much longer. For food, a 2-week supply of non-perishable, easy-to-prepare food is the baseline to manage the initial period. The factory's cafeteria, break rooms, and vending machines are your primary internal sources. A daily caloric intake should be established and adhered to, prioritizing foods with the shortest shelf life first. Think of it as a constant, low-level energy budget, just enough to maintain basic function.
I see the Industrial Survival Protocol document even provides a sample 14-day shelter ration and resource management plan. It operationalizes survival into a daily routine, which must be crucial for discipline and morale, detailing minute-by-minute changes in water and calorie rations over time. It's a stark reminder of how quickly life shifts to pure, calculated subsistence.
And that leads directly to sanitation and hygiene. In a confined space with multiple people, the breakdown of sanitation can be as deadly as the radiation outside.
Disease spreads fast.
Very fast. Preventing disease spread is a top priority. A simple gastrointestinal illness could quickly incapacitate or even kill an entire group. With conventional plumbing almost certainly non-functional, a dedicated toilet area must be established, situated as far as possible from sleeping, eating, and water storage areas.
Okay, separate area. What do you use?
A 55-gallon drum, lined with a heavy-duty plastic trash bag, and fitted with a makeshift toilet seat fashioned from scrap materials, is a practical solution. After each use, a scoop of dirt, sand, or kitty litter if available from the factory.
Kitty litter. Good idea for odor.
Yeah, it helps control odor and contain waste. Full bags must be securely sealed and stored with other contaminated materials away from the living space. Personal hygiene, using wet wipes, hand sanitizer, or carefully rationed water is essential for preventing infections.
Yeah.
Every action must be deliberate to contain contaminants.
Beyond the physical injuries from the initial blast, there's the insidious, invisible threat of acute radiation syndrome, or ARS. How do you even begin to address that without modern medical facilities, doctors, or advanced medications?
Traumatic injuries from the blast, like cuts, severe burns, or fractures, must be addressed immediately using whatever supplies are in the factory's first aid stations or nurse's office. You're essentially working with basic battlefield medicine.
Right. Stop the bleeding, clean the wound.
Exactly. But ARS, for those who receive significant radiation doses, is a more challenging and terrifying enemy. The primary initial symptoms are generalized nausea, vomiting, and extreme fatigue. A key diagnostic tool, even for a layperson, is the time between exposure and the onset of vomiting.
The time. How does that help?
The shorter that interval, the higher the radiation dose received, and unfortunately, the poorer the prognosis.
So if someone gets sick really quickly, like within an hour or two, that's a very bad sign, a horrifying indicator of their internal exposure.
Unfortunately, yes. Without professional medical care, specialized equipment, antibiotics, or blood transfusions, treatment for ARS is purely supportive. The goals are basic and fundamental. Prevent dehydration by managing vomiting and diarrhea with any available over-the-counter OTC medications, and clean water.
Keep them hydrated.
Keep them hydrated.
Yeah.
And meticulously keep any skin burns or other wounds clean to prevent infection, which the body's already compromised immune system will be unable to fight. Rest is absolutely critical for the body to have any chance of repairing its bone marrow and other vital systems.
It sounds grim.
It is. It must be assumed that specific medical countermeasures like potassium iodide or advanced chelating agents will be unavailable to the average survivor. The focus shifts entirely to basic compassionate supportive care and preventing any further exposure and contamination.
Beyond the physical, the psychological toll of confinement in a dark, dangerous, and uncertain environment must be immense. Hopelessness, despair, and panic are significant threats to the group's cohesion. How do you maintain order and morale in such extreme circumstances where every day feels like a grind?
The most effective countermeasures against psychological collapse are simple but profound. Structure, information, and purpose.
Structure, information, purpose. Okay.
A rigorous daily routine for meals, sleep, and assigned tasks provides a crucial sense of normalcy and control in an otherwise unpredictable and chaotic world. It creates a rhythm. A battery-powered or hand-crank radio is the single most important tool for maintaining a link to the outside world.
The radio, yeah.
It provides information, instructions from any remaining authorities, and perhaps most importantly, a vital thread of hope that there is still a world out there and that they're not utterly alone. And assigning each survivor a specific, meaningful role: radio operator, supply manager, sanitation officer, watchkeeper, repair technician, fosters purpose and shared responsibility, transforming a group of frightened victims into a functioning, interdependent survival team.
Give everyone a job. And there's a scientific principle that can be a powerful, often overlooked tool for morale in this terrifying situation. The predictable physics of radioactive decay. I know this is the rule of sevens and tens. It offers a tangible light at the end of the tunnel.
It's a truly potent psychological weapon against dread. The rule states that for every 7-fold increase in time after a detonation, the radiation exposure rate from fallout decreases by a factor of 10.
Factor of 10 decrease for every 7 times the time passes.
Exactly. Let's break that down with concrete examples. 7 hours after the explosion, the radiation rate outside will have dropped to about 10% of its initial peak.
Okay, 10% after 7 hours.
After 49 hours, that's 7 times 7, about 2 days, it'll be down to 1% of the initial peak. And after 343 hours, which is just over 2 weeks, the rate will be 0.1%.
Wow, so it drops off really fast initially.
Very fast. So you're not just passively waiting in the dark, you're actively outlasting the danger, and you can quantify it, see your progress.
Yeah, it makes sense.
This scientific certainty can be a powerful counter to the fear of an invisible, persistent threat. By explaining this principle clearly and keeping a visible log of the time elapsed, the shelter's occupants can tangibly track their increasing safety. Marking off these temporal milestones transforms the passive act of hiding into an active, quantifiable process of survival, providing a concrete timeline and reinforcing the belief that the danger is finite and survivable.
Yeah.
It's a remarkable way to manage the mind and provide hope in the face of annihilation. Every hour we survive, we are safer. That's a powerful message.
So we've covered the first minutes, the immediate decisions, and the first few weeks of confinement. But what about beyond that? Because the factory environment, it's not just a robust shelter, is it? It's a vast repository of tools, raw materials, and complex systems that could be critical for long-term survival.
That's right. For a factory worker with the right skills, this environment transforms from a mere refuge into a dynamic platform for long-term survival and even the beginning of rebuilding.
A platform for rebuilding.
Yeah, their pre-existing knowledge and hands-on expertise become assets of incalculable value, enabling them to solve problems, repair what's broken, and create infrastructure that would be utterly impossible for an unskilled survivor. It's about recognizing the true fundamental value of what lies around you.
Once the immediate, most dangerous period of fallout radiation has passed, generally after 24 to 48 hours, when levels drop to about 1% of their initial peak, thanks to the rule of sevens and tens, systematic scavenging becomes an option, albeit one with calculated risks.
These missions demand utmost caution and precision, weighing potential gain against known risks of exposure. The principles of time, distance, and shielding still apply rigorously. Missions should be as short as possible, conducted only to areas believed to have lower contamination.
Quick in, quick out.
Exactly. And protective clothing, even makeshift coverings like heavy work overalls and gloves, should be worn if available. Again, the worker's intimate knowledge of the factory layout is paramount for efficient scavenging, minimizing that precious exposure time by knowing exactly where to go and how to get there safely. You're moving with a purpose, not exploring.
Let's walk through some key scavenging priorities within a factory setting, referencing what the Industrial Survival Protocol document lays out. First, the cafeteria and break rooms. These seem like obvious targets.
High priority items here are essential for immediate sustenance. Canned and packaged food, bottled water from coolers or water dispensers, vending machine contents, though these may require force to open if power is out.
Yeah, break into the vending machine.
Might have to. Don't forget staple items like sugar, salt, and coffee, which provide calories and psychological comfort. Be acutely aware of the risk of food spoilage if refrigeration power has been out for long. Next, the first aid stations or nurse's office. Here you're looking for first aid kits, bandages, antiseptics, pain relievers, and any stored prescription medications, especially antibiotics. Remember, these supplies will be finite, so prioritize trauma care and infection control items above all else.
Antibiotics would be gold. And where does the factory worker's expertise truly shine? The maintenance shop and tool crib. This feels like the heart of future survival.
Absolutely. This is a treasure trove, quite literally the industrial toolkit for rebuilding. Here you'll find essential hand tools like wrenches, saws, hammers, screwdrivers, and pliers. Power tools might be present, but only useful if power can somehow be restored, or they can be adapted to scavenged battery packs. Look for welding equipment, though electricity is an issue. Acetylene torches might be functional, and an abundance of fasteners like nuts, bolts, screws, and nails. Secure any heavy, specialized tools. This is a primary resource for not just immediate repairs, but also long-term rebuilding and fabrication.
Basically, anything you need to fix or build something.
Pretty much. The shipping and receiving department is also vital, often overlooked, offering large rolls of plastic sheeting, industrial-grade duct tape, heavy-duty bags, wooden pallets, rope, twine, and manual pallet jacks, all essential for sealing the shelter, waste management, moving heavy materials, and even basic construction.
And what about the administrative offices? Beyond the usual office supplies, anything useful there?
Surprisingly, yes. There you might find battery-powered radios, flashlights, and a stock of spare batteries crucial for communication and light. You'll also find paper, pens, and local area maps, which become invaluable for navigation and planning once you venture outside. Just remember, any electronics may have been damaged by the EMP, so test them carefully.
Test everything.
Test everything. Finally, the warehouse and raw materials section. This is literally your building supply store. Look for those 55-gallon drums, raw materials for shielding like bagged concrete, steel reinforcing bar, or heavy metal plate, and wooden pallets for fuel or construction. Always assess for structural instability, but heavy materials here offer the best potential for additional shielding or future projects. It's about knowing where everything is and how to get it safely, recognizing its new fundamental value.
The specialized skills common in an industrial workforce are precisely the skills required to rebuild a semblance of civilization from the ruins. It's like the industrial toolkit becomes the new currency, replacing gold or paper money.
Indeed. Think of it. A welder, a machinist, a millwright, or a heavy equipment mechanic possesses the ability to transform scrap metal into essential survival tools. They can repair damaged shelter components, fabricate defensive barriers for security, reinforce structures, or construct critical items like a wood-burning stove from a 55-gallon drum for heating and cooking.
Make a stove from a drum. Cool.
Yeah. This ability to create, repair, and adapt is a force multiplier for the group's resilience, literally turning waste into a resource. You can't eat money, but you can cook on a scavenged stove.
And what about electrical knowledge? In a world without a grid, is an electrician's skill still relevant?
Critically so. An electrician understands power systems, even if the external grid is gone. While the sprawling external grid will be gone, they may be able to assess the factory's internal systems for viability. If a backup generator has survived the EMP, perhaps by being offline or in a shielded location, or even if it's a very old, purely mechanical diesel generator and fuel is available.
Need fuel, though.
Need fuel, that's the catch. But if you have it, the electrician could potentially isolate a small, critical circuit to power lights, a radio, or charge batteries. They can also safely salvage batteries from electric forklifts, golf carts, or other industrial equipment to create a low-voltage, direct current DC power bank, providing intermittent power for essential tasks.
Okay, so maybe some limited power is possible. And broader systems expertise, like plumbing or industrial process control engineers.
Workers familiar with the plant's plumbing, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, HVAC systems, or even chemical processes, have invaluable knowledge. A plumber, for instance, can identify safe, self-contained water sources that might remain within the factory, such as the large volume of potable water in a fire suppression system's reservoir or a boiler's holding tank.
Water in the fire sprinklers?
Potentially, yeah. It's often potable. They can devise methods to access it safely without contamination and distribute it. These aren't just skills, they are foundational building blocks for a new, self-reliant society.
So, leveraging those skills and the materials at hand, workers can begin to reestablish basic utilities within their fortified zone. Let's talk about water collection and purification. The factory roof could be a massive resource, but also a challenge.
The vast, often sloped roofs of many factory buildings are indeed ideal for rainwater harvesting. A worker can use their knowledge of fabrication to fashion makeshift gutters from scrap sheet metal, PVC pipe, or other available materials, directing that rainwater into clean 55-gallon drums or other large containers.
Okay, collect the rain.
But it's crucial to remember, this water will inevitably be contaminated by fallout particles on the roof, and must be considered non-potable until it is properly filtered
Gotta filter it.
through layers of cloth, sand, and charcoal, and then boiled vigorously to kill any biological contaminants. It's a multi-step process that requires ingenuity and care.
And for light and heat in the prolonged absence of electricity, how do you keep warm and see in the dark?
In the absence of electricity, light can be provided by flashlights powered by scavenged batteries, which will be a finite resource. More sustainably, you can create makeshift oil lamps from jars, cloth wicks, and any available machine oil or even vegetable oil from the cafeteria.
Makeshift lamps, okay.
For heat, a stove can be fabricated from a metal drum or heavy-gauge steel from the fabrication shop, vented carefully to the outside to prevent carbon monoxide poisoning, which is a silent, deadly killer. Fuel can be sourced from non-essential wood items like pallets, crates, and office furniture. Fire safety must be the highest priority, as an uncontrolled fire within the shelter would be an unsurvivable catastrophe in such a confined space.
What's truly profound here is the implication that the factory itself becomes a technology seed bank for a shattered world. It's more than just a place to survive, it's a blueprint for the future.
Exactly. In the aftermath of a large-scale nuclear war, the global capacity for advanced manufacturing will be annihilated. The ability to produce even simple items like a nail, a bolt, or a wire, which we take completely for granted today, will be lost.
Can't just go to the hardware store.
No. A surviving factory, however, contains not only the raw materials, but also the tools and machinery, the literal means of production in microcosm. It holds hand tools, power tools, lathes, welders, presses, and specialized equipment.
And crucially, the factory worker holds the procedural knowledge, the software, to operate this hardware. They know how to make things.
That combination of tools, materials, and skills is the essential nucleus from which a small-scale technological society can begin to be rebooted. The ability to turn a pile of scrap steel into a water pump, a hand-crank generator, a functional tool, or a defensive weapon is what separates long-term survival and genuine rebuilding from a slow, inevitable decline into a pre-industrial state.
Wow.
Therefore, a key long-term strategy for the factory worker survivor is not just to occupy the factory, but to secure, maintain, and cherish its workshops and tool cribs as the most valuable assets for the future. They are literally holding the keys to technological revival, the potential for a new beginning.
After weeks or even months in the shelter comes the incredibly difficult and dangerous decision to emerge. This transition from the relative safety of your fortified space to the hazardous external environment is a critical phase. When and how do you make that decision, or do you simply wait until you have no other choice?
The primary determinant for leaving the shelter should ideally be official guidance. A battery-powered AM/FM radio, if it survived the EMP and you have batteries, if it works, is the essential link to whatever authorities may remain. Their instructions regarding safe zones and evacuation routes must be heeded, as they will hopefully have access to broader radiological mapping and reconnaissance. Self-evacuation is extremely hazardous and is strongly discouraged until dangerous fallout areas have been identified or sufficient time has passed for decay.
So no rushing out as soon as things seem quiet or you run out of coffee. It requires incredible patience.
Exactly. The minimum sheltering period is 24 to 48 hours, during which the most rapid decay of fallout radiation occurs, as per the rule of 7s and 10s. However, in areas with heavy fallout, it may be necessary to remain sheltered for several weeks or even up to a month for radiation levels to drop to truly tolerable levels for sustained outdoor activity.
Weeks or a month.
Yeah. The decision to leave before official instruction should only be made under dire, unavoidable circumstances, such as a fire, imminent structural collapse of the shelter, or complete exhaustion of life-sustaining supplies like water. If a move to a better nearby shelter is unavoidable, it should be undertaken as rapidly as possible to minimize time spent outdoors and maximize shielding during the transit.
Even after emerging, the long-term health management remains a critical concern. That persistent, invisible threat of radiation is still there, now chronic.
It is. The post-shelter world remains a radiologically hazardous environment. Fallout particles contaminate the ground, water sources, and every exposed surface, creating a persistent threat of chronic radiation exposure. The core principles of time, distance, and shielding continue to be the primary tools for health preservation in this new reality.
Still time, distance, shielding.
Always. Time spent in contaminated areas must be minimized, distance from known hotspots must be maximized, and living quarters must continue to offer the best available shielding. Every building becomes a potential shield.
And for those who may have suffered from acute radiation syndrome earlier, perhaps those who are exposed to higher doses but survive the initial acute phase, what happens to them long term?
Survivors of acute radiation syndrome, ARS, who receive moderate doses, will be severely immunocompromised and highly vulnerable to infection, even from common pathogens. Their survival depends entirely on meticulous supportive care, a clean living environment, access to clean water, adequate nutrition, and most importantly, prolonged rest to allow their bone marrow to attempt regeneration.
Their immune system is shot.
Pretty much. Without access to advanced medical care like antibiotics, sterile environments, or blood transfusions, their prognosis remains grim. It must be assumed that specific medical countermeasures like potassium iodide or advanced chelating agents will be unavailable to the average survivor. The absolute focus must be on prevention of further exposure and contamination, as their bodies will have little defense left.
Looking further out, the long-term challenge of securing safe food and water will be immense. The sources suggest a large-scale nuclear exchange has the potential to trigger a nuclear winter. What does that truly mean for our planet and our ability to survive?
Yes. This scenario posits that vast quantities of soot and dust from the global firestorms would be injected into the stratosphere, blocking sunlight from reaching the Earth's surface for months, possibly years.
Blocking the sun.
Blocking the sun. This would cause global temperatures to plummet, disrupt monsoons and other weather patterns, leading to widespread crop failures and ultimately the collapse of agriculture worldwide. The result would be famine on an unprecedented global scale.
So how do you even begin to approach water security in that kind of world, especially with fallout everywhere?
All open surface water sources like rivers, lakes, and reservoirs must be considered dangerously contaminated with long-lived radioactive isotopes like strontium-90 and cesium-137. Drinking directly from them is a death sentence over time.
Avoid rivers and lakes.
Absolutely. The safest long-term water sources will be deep, protected groundwater wells or carefully collected rainwater. But even then, all water, regardless of source, must be assumed, contaminated, and rigorously filtered through layers of cloth, sand, and charcoal, and then boiled vigorously before consumption to ensure it's free of both radioactive particles and biological contaminants.
Filter and boil everything.
Everything, every time. And food. With agriculture potentially collapsing for years, what do people eat? Food security will be defined by extreme scarcity. Pre-war, non-perishable foods scavenged from untargeted locations, particularly underground warehouses or deeply buried caches, will be the most valuable commodity. Agriculture will be nearly impossible in the short to medium term due to fallout contamination, climate disruption, and the lapse of the industrial support systems. It depends on fertilizer production, pesticides, and complex machinery.
No fertilizer, no tractors.
Exactly. Any surviving wildlife will be contaminated through the food chain. Long-term survival may depend on developing alternative food sources, such as contained environment, hydroponics, or aquaculture of highly resilient organisms like seaweed, which has been identified as a potential food source in nuclear winter scenarios due to its rapid growth and ability to filter certain contaminants. It's about fundamental ingenuity and radical adaptation.
Seaweed, okay. Beyond the physical challenges, the psychological resilience needed for this new world is immense. The toll on survivors will be staggering. Post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, severe depression, and debilitating anxiety will likely be the norm. How do you maintain sanity in a world that has utterly collapsed?
Coping requires a fundamental shift in mindset, from individual survival to collective purpose. The establishment of routines, a clear sense of purpose derived from meaningful work, and the cultivation of strong social bonds within the survivor group are powerful protective factors against psychological collapse.
Community becomes essential.
Absolutely essential. The group must evolve from a state of pure survival to one of active rebuilding, however small. The human mind needs a project, something to create, something to focus on, beyond just staying alive day to day.
And this is where the factory workers' true value, that technology seed bank we talked about, is fully realized. Their purpose shifts from self-preservation to community restoration.
Absolutely. Their skills in engineering, fabrication, and repair are not just tools for their own survival, but are the foundational elements for restoring community and technology. The act of building a water filter, repairing a scavenged generator, or fortifying a dwelling provides not only tangible benefit, but also a powerful source of hope, agency, and purpose, the essential ingredients for psychological resilience in the face of annihilation. They are the practical dreamers, the builders.
It sounds like the very concept of value itself becomes inverted in this post-nuclear world. Our current ideas of wealth would simply vanish.
It does. The complex financial and social systems that give value to currency, stocks, or precious metals will have been utterly erased. Wealth will be redefined by immediate survival utility and the ability to create it.
What can you use right now?
Exactly. In this new paradigm, a bottle of potable water, a can of preserved food, a dose of antibiotics, or a box of ammunition becomes the new currency. These are the immediate needs.
But more valuable than even those immediate consumables are the renewable resources, the means to produce these items, the knowledge, the tools, the skills.
Precisely. The knowledge of how to purify water, how to grow food, or how to repair a tool becomes the ultimate form of capital. The factory worker, by virtue of being in a facility filled with tools and materials and possessing the skills to use them, is positioned to be among the most wealthy and powerful individuals in this new world. This concentration of resources, however, also makes the factory a prime target for other, more desperate survivors.
So, the long term survival plan must extend beyond mere subsistence and engineering. It has to include strategies for security and, in essence, diplomacy.
Absolutely. The construction of defensible positions, the establishment of patrols, and a clear protocol for interacting with outsiders, a form of rudimentary diplomacy, where resources and skills might be bartered for safety or mutual aid. The surviving factory is not just a shelter and a workshop, it is a fortified city-state in miniature, a new kind of community.
A city state.
In a way, yes, and its occupants must be prepared to defend it, not just from the elements and radiation, but from others who would seek to take what they have painstakingly built.
We've journeyed through the harrowing and intensely practical reality of nuclear war survival, specifically through the eyes of a factory worker. From the immediate life-saving reflexes in the first 15 minutes, to transforming an industrial facility into a fortified shelter, managing life within it for weeks, and finally leveraging specialized skills and materials to rebuild a semblance of civilization in a shattered world. It's a testament to human adaptability and the surprising power of intimate knowledge.
We've seen how profound, almost overlooked knowledge of one's environment and specific technical skills become the ultimate form of wealth and resilience, not just for the individual, but potentially for an entire group, for the seeds of a future society. It's a chilling, yet oddly inspiring look at our inherent capacity to survive and adapt.
As we consider this deep dive, you might find yourself looking at your own daily environment, your workplace, your home, or even your personal skills in an entirely new light. What if the most valuable assets for an unimaginable future are not what we buy, but what we know, what we can do, and the often overlooked potential of the spaces we inhabit every day? What might your personal technology seed bank be hidden in plain sight?